In the heart of Eastern Europe, nestled between Romania and Ukraine, lies Moldova, a small nation with a complex past and an uncertain future. Its rolling hills and fertile plains have long been a crossroads of empires, cultures, and ambitions. Today, Moldova stands at a pivotal moment in its history, facing choices that will shape generations to come. Since declaring independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, Moldova has walked a delicate tightrope, balancing the lingering influence of Russia with its growing aspirations for European integration. The country's identity is a tapestry woven from both East and West, reflected in its language, politics, and daily life. The parliamentary election of September 2025 was far from a routine political event. For many Moldovans, it was a defining referendum on the nation's future direction, an opportunity to choose between deepening ties with the European Union or maintaining close relations with Russia. The stakes were heightened by the ongoing war in neighboring Ukraine, which cast a shadow of uncertainty and fear across Moldova's borders. Security concerns, economic pressures, and the threat of instability loomed large in the minds of voters. In 2024, a national referendum narrowly enshrined EU membership as a constitutional goal, and President Maya Sandu was re-elected, signaling a clear pro-European shift. Her victory inspired hope among many, but also deepened divisions within the country. Yet, without a supportive parliament, President Sandu's ambitious reforms and vision for Moldova's future would remain out of reach. The outcome of this election would determine whether her government could deliver on promises of change. The campaign was fierce and passionate. Pro-EU voices filled the streets, promising democracy, prosperity, and a place in the European family. Supporters hoped for a brighter future, free from corruption and aligned with Western values. Meanwhile, pro-Russian forces warned of economic hardship, cultural loss, and the dangers of turning away from traditional allies. They argued that Moldova's unique identity could be lost in the rush toward Europe. As Moldovan citizens headed to the polls, the air was thick with anticipation and anxiety. The nation's future direction toward east or west hung in the balance, with every vote carrying the weight of history and hope. The election pitted two starkly different visions against each other, setting the stage for one of the most consequential moments in Moldova's recent history. The stakes were high, and the outcome would shape the country's direction for years to come. On one side stood President Maya Sandu's Party of Action and Solidarity, or PAS. They campaigned on a platform of anti-corruption, promising to clean up government institutions and bring transparency to public life. Judicial reform was at the heart of their message, aiming to restore trust in the courts and law enforcement. But perhaps most importantly, PAS championed Moldova's integration with the European Union, offering a vision of prosperity, democracy, and a future aligned with Western values. Their supporters, often young, urban, and hopeful, saw Europe as Moldova's path out of poverty and corruption. For them, the EU represented opportunity, freedom to travel, and a break from the country's troubled past. Many believed that closer ties with Europe would bring better jobs, stronger institutions, and a brighter future for the next generation. Opposing them was the pro-Russian Patriotic Electoral Bloc, or BEP, led by former President Igor Dodon. The BEP appealed to traditionalists, older generations, and rural voters who felt left behind by rapid change. They promised stability, protection of Moldovan identity, and closer ties with Russia, which many still saw as a vital partner. The BEP warned that aligning with the European Union would threaten Moldova's fragile economy, risk antagonizing Russia, and undermine the country's sovereignty. Their campaign played on fears of losing traditional values and the security that many associated with the East. PS promised hope, progress, and a new beginning. In contrast, BEP invoked nostalgia for the past and skepticism toward the West, urging voters to remember Moldova's roots and the risks of turning away from Russia. The divide was not just political but deeply geographic and generational. The Moldovan diaspora, mostly pro-European, cast their ballots from abroad, while Russian-speaking regions like Gagauzia remained staunchly pro-Russian. These differences highlighted the country's deep divisions and the complexity of its identity. The election became more than a contest for power. It was a battle of identities, East versus West, past versus future, tradition versus change. Every vote was a statement about what kind of country Moldova wanted to become. Moldova's destiny was at stake, and the world was watching to see which path this small but determined nation would choose. As results came in, it was clear. Moldova had chosen a new direction. PAS won just over 50% of the vote, securing a rare outright majority in parliament. President Sandu called it Moldova's victory, a mandate for reform and EU integration. Celebrations erupted in Chisinau, while the patriotic bloc, with only 24%, was left in opposition. The result was a clear rejection of closer ties with Moscow. For the first time, a single party could govern decisively, without coalition wrangling. This majority gave PS the power to push through tough reforms needed for EU accession. Moldova's pro-European camp now had both the authority and the responsibility to deliver. The country stood at the threshold of a new era. Moldova's election was fought not just at the ballot box, but in the shadows of a Russian hybrid campaign. Authorities dismantled hundreds of Russian-linked social media accounts, spreading disinformation and division. AI-generated fake news targeted President Sandu and PAS, warning of economic collapse and war if Moldova joined the EU. Cyber attacks and fake bomb threats at overseas polling stations aimed to intimidate voters, especially the pro-European diaspora. Despite these efforts, international observers declared the election free and fair. The OSCE praised Moldova's resilience under pressure. Russia denied involvement but criticized the limited polling for its diaspora. Moldova's democracy was tested and endured. The Moldovan diaspora played a decisive and historic role in PAS's victory, demonstrating the power of citizens living far from home to shape the future of their country. Across Europe and beyond, hundreds of thousands of Moldovans turned out in record numbers, braving long lines and sometimes harsh weather, often waiting for hours just to cast their ballots. For many, this was more than just a vote. It was a statement of hope and a demand for change. Their support for PAS was overwhelming, over 90% in many diaspora polling stations. This landslide reflected not only political preferences, but also a deep desire for a more transparent, European-oriented Moldova. Remittances from abroad are vital to Moldova's economy, sustaining families and entire communities. The diaspora's experience living and working in the EU has shaped their vision for Moldova, inspiring hopes for better governance, opportunity, and integration with Europe. Attempts to disrupt their vote, including bomb threats and other intimidation tactics at embassies, only strengthened their resolve. Many voters described a sense of unity and determination, refusing to be silenced or deterred. Critics argue the diaspora has too much influence over Moldova's politics, since they live abroad. But for many, the diaspora is a vital bridge to Europe, bringing new ideas, values, and connections that can help modernize the country. Their votes tipped the balance, countering the influence of pro-Russian regions at home and helping to secure a pro-European majority in parliament. The diaspora's message was clear and unmistakable. Moldova's future, in their eyes, lies with Europe, and they are determined to help lead the way. Their engagement underscored a nation connected far beyond its borders, united by a shared vision and a hope for a brighter European future for Moldova. The world took notice of Moldova's choice. EU leaders, including Ursula von der Leyen, welcomed the result, promising support for Moldova's accession. European capitals praised the peaceful democratic process despite Russian interference. For the EU, Moldova's pro-Western turn is a strategic win, especially with the war in Ukraine ongoing. Ukraine's President Zelensky called it a shared victory against Russian destabilization. Moldova and Ukraine, now closer than ever, see their futures intertwined in Europe. Moscow, meanwhile, responded with criticism, warning against Moldova becoming an anti-Russian appendage. Russia's disappointment signals a tense road ahead for bilateral relations. International support bolsters Moldova's new government, but challenges remain. The election's impact rippled far beyond Moldova's borders. The patriotic bloc refused to accept defeat, alleging widespread violations. Protests in Chisinau were small, failing to gain momentum. Igor Dodon claimed voters in Transnistria were disenfranchised and criticized the barring of two pro-Russian parties. International observers noted the late exclusion of parties was problematic, but did not question the overall fairness. The opposition tried to delegitimize the process, but found little public support. The decisive PAS victory and international endorsement gave the new government strong legitimacy. The opposition remains vocal, but their challenge to the election's validity has largely fizzled. Moldova's pro-European government moves forward undeterred. Apas's victory is just the beginning of a tough journey. Moldova must overhaul its justice system, fight corruption, and modernize its economy to meet EU standards. The unresolved conflict in Transnistria, backed by Russian troops, remains a major obstacle. Economic woes, poverty, inflation, and energy dependence threaten social stability. Diversifying energy sources and attracting investment are urgent priorities. Moscow could exploit Transnistria or economic hardship to destabilize Moldova. Pushing reforms will face resistance from entrenched interests. The government's mandate is strong, but success depends on political skill and EU support. Moldova's path to Europe is fraught with risks, but the opportunity is historic. The next years will test the nation's resolve like never before. The 2025 election marks a turning point for Moldova. A clear majority chose a European future, giving PAS a mandate for reform and integration. The challenges ahead, economic, political, and geopolitical, are daunting. Yet, for the first time, Moldova's government, president, and constitution are united in purpose. International support is strong, and Moldova is no longer a forgotten corner of Europe. The opposition will persist, but the people's choice is clear. Moldova's resilience in the face of pressure and disinformation is a testament to its democratic spirit. The journey to Brussels will be long, but the path is set. Moldova's new chapter has begun, one defined by hope, unity, and a European dream within reach.